Donald Trump has sent a letter to Canada threatening a new tariff rate of 35% starting August 1st.
Frankly, Donald Trump just treats Canada like trash.
Trump has just thrown down a serious challenge, announcing a 35% tariff on all Canadian imports, far higher than what most countries face. The impact was immediate. Markets reacted sharply. Toronto's main stock index dropped 59 points, and the Canadian dollar slid as traders braced for economic fallout. A trade relationship worth $762 billion is now hanging by a thread. In Ottawa, the response was swift. Canada's top officials are on alert, with provincial leaders pushing for decisive action. Industry leaders are sounding the alarm, warning that manufacturing lines could grind to a halt within weeks. Trump's blunt message left little room for doubt. He's expecting retaliation. Now, Prime Minister Mark Carney must decide: respond with measured tariffs, or risk going all in with a broader trade strike that could end up driving inflation back into the U.S. economy. What started as a single announcement may be the opening shot in a conflict that could reshape how goods move across North America. And with August 1st closing in, the clock is ticking, with real consequences for everything from groceries to car prices to retirement savings. On July 10, 2025, a White House alert rattled markets as President Trump announced a 35% tariff on all Canadian imports starting August 1st, warning that retaliation would bring even steeper penalties. The Canadian dollar dropped first, followed by stocks. The S&P/TSX Composite broke its two-day rally, dragged down by tech and banking losses. Traders called it a Section 232 on steroids, disrupting capital flows and triggering risk model resets. Companies scrambled to hedge exposure, buying U.S. dollars and short-term options. On Bay Street, speculation of an emergency Bank of Canada rate cut grew, aimed at shielding consumer demand before tariffs hit retail prices. Freight brokers reported delays as carriers hesitated to quote cross-border hauls, fearing customs chaos. In Ottawa, PM Mark Carney ordered a counter-strike plan focused on swing state industries, like whiskey and auto parts, without harming key Canadian sectors. Analysts warn a tit-for-tat could cut 0.5% off Q3 GDP and revive inflation. All eyes now turn to August 1st, the make-or-break moment for North American trade. The market shock quickly spilled into politics. On July 11, Ontario Premier Doug Ford warned that Canadians must unite before Washington's 35% tariff hits their wallets. Minutes after Trump's letter went public, Ford called it a direct threat to Ontario's auto industry and announced that PM Mark Carney had agreed to an emergency premiers meeting on July 22 in Huntsville. The goal: finalize a retaliation plan targeting swing state sectors like Tennessee whiskey, Wisconsin dairy, and Michigan auto parts, key to flipping the 2024 U.S. election. On the West Coast, BC Premier David Eye echoed Ford's stance despite differing politics. Calling Trump's move an attack on sovereignty, EIE ordered red state brands pulled from liquor stores and urged Canadians to boycott U.S. travel and shop local. Together, these provinces represent over two-thirds of Canada's GDP and 60% of its workforce. Though 75.9% of Canadian exports go to the U.S., that interdependence could also pressure U.S. factories that rely on Canadian metals and minerals. Ottawa is reportedly drafting a dollar-for-dollar tariff plan that avoids disrupting Canadian supply chains, mirroring a 2018 strategy that led the U.S. to lift duties within months. Still, business groups warn any misstep could spike core inflation by 1% before Thanksgiving. With premiers from Alberta to Quebec backing action, Canada's political landscape now shows one united front: retaliation. All eyes are on July 22 to see if that unity holds. Ottawa learned a hard lesson. On June 30, Prime Minister Mark Carney paused Canada's proposed digital services tax, expected to raise $5.9 billion over 5 years, to ease tensions with Washington. Just 10 days later, Trump responded with a 35% blanket tariff, wiping out any goodwill. One insider called it appeasement with no receipt. New Democrat MP Charlie Angus made it clear at a March 5 press briefing: Canada will never bend. We won't kiss the gangster's ring. His message resonated. Analysts warned Trump's separate 50% tariff on imported copper, key for EV batteries, could raise vehicle material costs from 5% to 9%. That means a Canadian-made car could carry $3,500 more in hidden tariffs, and fully imported ones up to $5,700. For U.S. buyers already facing $46,000 average car prices, this undercuts EV affordability and gives Chinese suppliers a pricing edge. Canadian miners are also concerned. Canada produced enough copper in 2024 for 3 million EVs. If exports shift to Europe or Asia, U.S. factories may face critical shortages just as Washington pushes to build clean tech jobs at home. Trump's tariff not only nullifies a billion-dollar Canadian tax delay but also undermines his own green agenda. That's why Angus and a growing bipartisan group now demand a dollar-for-dollar response. With August 1st fast approaching, Canada faces a choice: act or repeat a costly mistake. Ottawa paid the price for backing down. On June 30th, Prime Minister Mark Carney suspended Canada's digital services tax, meant to raise $5.9 billion over 5 years, to ease talks with Washington. Just 10 days later, Trump hit back with a sweeping 35% tariff, erasing any goodwill. One insider called it appeasement without a receipt. At a March 5th press conference, NDP MP Charlie Angus didn't hold back: Canada will never bend. We won't kiss the gangster's ring. His warning came with numbers. Trump's separate 50% copper tariff, crucial for EV batteries, could raise material costs from 5% to 9%, adding $3,500 to the cost of Canadian-built cars, and up to $5,700 for fully imported ones. That would hit U.S. drivers already facing record $46,000 prices and hand Chinese firms a competitive edge. Canada refined enough copper in 2024 for 3 million EVs. If that supply shifts to Europe or Asia, U.S. factories could face shortages just as Washington tries to grow clean tech jobs. Trump's move erased a billion-dollar concession and undercut his own EV agenda. Now, Angus and a cross-party group insist Canada must respond dollar for dollar. With August 1st closing in, the cost of delay keeps rising. The personal boycotts are just the beginning. The broader picture is shifting from warning signs to full-blown crisis. Official U.S. data shows two-way trade with Canada reached $762.1 billion in 2024, the largest trade link in North America. TD Economics warns that if the U.S. maintains its 35% tariff into next year and Canada retaliates, exports to the U.S. could drop 5% by 2027, cutting 2.4 percentage points from Canada's GDP and stalling cross-border investments. Quebec Premier François Legault put it bluntly on February 2, up to 100,000 jobs in the province are at risk, from miners in Abitibi to aluminum workers in Saguenay and auto part suppliers along the St. Lawrence. The fallout would hit the U.S. too. 1 in 8 drivetrain parts in American cars come from Quebec and Ontario. Losing those would halt Detroit's just-in-time assembly lines within weeks, causing furloughs at key Ford and GM plants. Bloomberg economists warn a 2% Canadian downturn could cut 0.3 points off U.S. growth through supply chain shocks and lower energy demand. Wall Street is already reacting. 10-year Treasury yields dropped 6 basis points the day Legault spoke, and the S&P 500's machinery sector posted its worst day since the March banking scare. Traders now call it the North-South recession trade, betting tariffs will bounce back into U.S. factory orders by Thanksgiving. In less than 6 months, one tariff move has jeopardized $750 billion in annual trade and hundreds of thousands of Canadian jobs. If capital and labor can't dodge this cross-border blowback, the next victim might be the recovery both countries were counting on. That overnight 35% tariff united Canada's political spectrum into a single, focused push against Washington. Markets plunged, tourists canceled U.S. trips, and EV makers warned each vehicle could cost $3,000 more. Economists now say the $762 billion trade flow between the two nations is hanging by a thread. Quebec alone fears 6-figure job losses if tensions escalate. If Trump doubles down, Ottawa, Brussels, and Tokyo could form a metals alliance, like a mineral OPEC, rerouting supply and leaving U.S. buyers to foot the bill. If he backs off, a last-minute handshake could deliver a USMCA 2.0, with both sides claiming victory. August 1st isn't just a deadline, it's a trigger. The only question now, will the headline read, Canada strikes back, or Trump backs down? The countdown to August 1st isn't just about trade, it's about power, pressure, and the future of two intertwined economies. One move could reshape global supply chains. One misstep could trigger a recession on both sides of the border. As leaders posture and markets tremble, millions wait, jobs, prices, and industries hanging in the balance. This isn't just policy. It's personal. And whatever happens next will leave a mark far beyond the headlines. Stay sharp, because the fallout from this tariff war is only just beginning.